The Summary Bible. Part 2. Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth. In this video, we will explore an abridged version of the Holy Bible to better understand its importance and its central message. Book of Deuteronomy. The Book of Deuteronomy is one of the 5 books of the Jewish Torah and is part of the Tanakh, Christian Old Testament. It is the last book written by Moses and is considered his farewell address to the nation of Israel before his death. The name, Deuteronomy, comes from 2 Greek words meaning second law, and the book focuses on restating and updating the law that God had given his people through Moses on Sinai. This law includes the 10 Commandments, as well as rules and regulations on how to live in community and how to honor God. Deuteronomy addresses many issues relevant to Israelite society, including justice, social justice, war, slavery, and the alliance with God. Topics such as the importance of obedience to divine law and the consequences of disobedience are also discussed. Moses calls on the nation to faithfully follow God's law and to avoid pagan cults and the worship of other gods. In one of the most famous chapters of Deuteronomy, the 10 Commandments are discussed. These commandments provide a solid foundation for moral and spiritual life and are considered a guide to living in harmony with God and with others. The 10 Commandments include commandments such as, "Have no other gods before me," "You shall not take God's name in vain," and "Honor your father and mother." In addition, Deuteronomy includes a description of the blessings the nation will receive if it faithfully follows God's law, and the negative consequences it will experience if it strays from it. This theme is particularly important in the book's view of the life of nations and the relationships between them. Another important theme in Deuteronomy is social justice. Leaders and the public are called upon to work together to ensure that everyone has access to justice and equality before the law. Leaders are asked to be impartial and just in their decisions, and are reminded that they are accountable to God for how they handle their charge. In short, the book of Deuteronomy is an important part of Scripture and is still relevant today. Book of Joshua. The Book of Joshua is one of the historical books of the Old Testament and tells the story of how the people of Israel, led by Joshua, conquered the promised land of Canaan. This book follows after the Exodus from Egypt and from the desert, and before the time of the judges in Israel. Joshua was chosen as the successor of Moses and as leader of the people of Israel after the death of Moses. God promised Joshua that he would be the instrument of the conquest of Canaan, and that he and his people would be blessed if they obeyed God's commandments. The book of Joshua describes how Joshua and his people fought against the inhabitants of Canaan, including conquering the city of Jericho and winning the Battle of Gibeon. In each case, Joshua obeyed God's instructions, trusting in his help for victory. In addition to the story of the conquest of Canaan, the book of Joshua also describes the division of the land among the tribes of Israel. Each tribe received a piece of land to establish their home and prosper. Joshua also gave the Israelites instructions to follow God's commandments and remain faithful to his covenant with him. The book of Joshua is a reminder of God's faithfulness and his provision for his people. Also, it shows the importance of obeying God's commandments and trusting in his help in difficult times. Joshua's story is a source of inspiration and encouragement for those who seek to follow God closely. In short, the book of Joshua is an exciting account of Israel's conquest of Canaan and how God fulfilled his promise to give them a land in which to prosper. This book is a testimony of God's faithfulness and love towards his people, and is an important source of teaching and guidance for Christians today. Book of Judges. The Book of Judges is one of the 13 historical books of the Hebrew Bible. It is found in the Old Testament and recounts the events of Israel from the death of Joshua to the reign of Saul, the first king of Israel. History is divided into two parts: the time of the judges and the time of the kings. The time of the judges was a period of approximately 300 years, in which Israel was without a central leader and without an established government. Instead, local leaders called judges guided their people in times of crisis. These judges were people that God had chosen to save his people from the enemies that attacked them. Some of the better-known judges include Othniel, Ehud, Deborah, and Samson. The second part of the book of Judges describes the time when the Israelites began to demand a king to rule over them like the other nations. God warned them that a human king would not be able to meet their needs, and that he himself should be their king. However, the Israelites would not listen, and they chose Saul as their first king. Despite the choice of a king, the time of the judges is remembered as a period of sin and misguidance in Israel. The Israelites often abandoned God and followed other pagan gods, which resulted in their captivity and oppression by their enemies. However, God always sent a judge to save them and bring them back to him. The book of Judges is a reminder of God's faithfulness to his people and of his desire to protect them and provide just leaders. Also, it is a warning about the dangers of sin and the importance of following God rather than imperfect human leaders. In short, the book of Judges is an important part of the Bible that teaches about God's faithfulness to his people, the importance of following God rather than human leaders, and the consequences of sin. It is a source of inspiration and hope for believers today, and a reminder of the importance of staying true to God at all times. Book of Ruth. The Book of Ruth is one of the historical books of the Old Testament and tells the story of a Moabite woman named Ruth who decides to convert to the people of God and join the family of Naomi, her Jewish mother-in-law. The story takes place during the time of the judges in Israel and is considered an example of loyalty, kindness, and unconditional love. Ruth was originally from Moab, an enemy town of Israel, but after the death of her husband and her children, she decides to follow her mother-in-law, Naomi, to Bethlehem, in Judea. Naomi had lost her husband and her children, and she had decided to return to her homeland after living in Moab for many years. Ruth becomes Naomi's loyal companion and confidant, and together they seek God's help to survive a difficult time. During the barley harvest, Ruth finds work in a field belonging to Boaz, a distant relative of Naomi's. Boaz is kind and helpful to Ruth, and gradually a romantic relationship develops between them. Mosaic law allowed Levirate marriage, in which a close relative of the deceased husband should marry the widow to protect her future and perpetuate the family. Boaz, however, demonstrates her love for Ruth and her desire to marry her, and ensures that she and Naomi have a safe and secure future. An inspiring account of love, loyalty, and dedication, the Book of Ruth demonstrates how God can work through difficult situations to bless those who trust him. In addition, it is a testimony of God's unconditional love for all people, regardless of their origin or past. Ruth's story is a reminder that God can use difficult situations to carry out his plans and bless those who trust him. In conclusion, the Book of Ruth is an exciting and significant story that has been valued and studied by many throughout the centuries. With her focus on loyalty, dedication, and unconditional love, it is a powerful reminder of God's grace and providence in our lives.